Hello, welcome to the podcast. I have another special guest with me today. As you can see on the screen, I've got John Hicks with me. He's with Dave Yoho Associates. He's one of their senior account executives, and I believe you've been with Dave Yoho for about 3 or 4 years. Is that right?
That's right, Rich. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I think most people who listen to this podcast are familiar with Dave Yoho Associates. Certainly, everybody's heard of it. Give a quick overview of what it is the company does for those who are not aware, and then a little bit more specifically what it is you do before we jump into the topic.
Excellent. Dave Yoho Associates is the oldest, largest, and most successful consulting firms operating in North America. And we were founded back in 1962. And we have a proven track record of assisting, home improvement companies, remodeling companies, and home services companies in driving revenue and increasing profitability.
And I think if you ask, 100 remodeling companies, what does Dave Yoho and Associates do? You only get one answer. I think most people would say sales. Is that the number one thing, or is that just one of many things?
Well, Rich, while it is a big part of what we do, because everything starts with sales. Without the sales, we don't have the revenue. But we spend time working with the managers and working with the owners, taking a look at P&L statements. We also we work with their call centers, intake centers. So we do a little bit of everything, and it kind of all ties and meshes together here.
And what about marketing? Is that part of your portfolio of services?
Yes, we do. In fact, my boss, Brad Yoho, the VP of the company, is actually our subject matter expert in marketing.
Okay. Yeah, I've had Brad on the podcast before. I've also actually had Dave on the podcast before. I think it was roughly 2020 or 2019. I think it was before COVID. Like there's a pre-COVID and a post-COVID break in my timelines. I'll look those up and I'll put them in the show notes. So if anybody wants to go review that, listen to those, you're welcome to do that. Today, John, we want to jump in and talk about some selling things, some sales system things. I asked you a question before we came on. Yeah, you gave me some notes, and the questions are this: when you go into consult with remodeling home improvement companies, what are some of the biggest problems or mistakes or weak points that you're having to fix? And that's where we're going to start the conversation today.
Well, Rich, that's a great question. And with most offices, it starts with, do they have a step-based, proven sales system? And what we find is some offices just have some sales reps who are very charismatic. They hit the streets, they have some sales, and they've done okay. But that becomes very difficult to duplicate, difficult to train. Then we also have a group of clients that we go into the home, we go into their office, and we see they have some steps. They have a makeshift system, but a lot of times it really doesn't focus on the customer's true needs and wants, and they find that they're often struggling with close rates and closing business.
In those cases, would you say that those step-based selling systems that they have are actual systems that they're using, or just something they cobbled together that happens to have some steps? Like
You know, I,
a lack of intention, maybe.
That's another great question because I think it's that cobbled together piece, and a lot of it derives from ours. We've been around for so long, Rich, that people have moved from job to job. And I look at it like this. Remember back in the third grade, and we did a little exercise about spreading rumors, and they whispered in one person's ear, and they asked you to pass it to the next person.
Yeah,
And by
telephone
the
game.
time, yes, and by the time you get to the end, and it was a completely different message. It's essentially what we see today. People have bits and pieces or elements, and then we come in and work with them on how to use those steps and how to be effective and increase their close rates.
Yeah, so it seems like you would have a lot of situations where maybe a sales team has a really good producer and they say, "Hey, you're really good. What system are you using? Okay, here, train that on these guys." And they're like,
Yeah,
"Great. Now, who knows where they got it and who knows how much they've adjusted it and who knows how good they are at training it?"
there's a lot of people on this call right now listening, going, "That's what we do." And the difficult part is that those people are often not your best trainers. they have this innate ability to walk in and just build a relationship with someone. Those are those people treat sales like an art form. We treat sales in the sales process as a form of a science, so that it can be trained, it can be duplicated. In fact, Rich, we can take someone with little to no sales experience, teach them our process if they apply themselves, and they can be super successful.
Yeah, like those people that you said treat it as an art. They're like intuitively probably running through these steps. They would never call them steps, but they just do it. I'm going to ask you a question that you probably don't know the answer to. In fact, I know you don't know it specifically, but I'm going to ask you to give me your best guess. Okay. Here's the
Okay.
question. Three categories. What percentage of companies fit into these three categories? No selling system whatsoever, just randomly out there selling, or they do have a step-based selling program that's intentional. No comment about how good or bad it is, but it exists. And then the cobbled together. So what do you think the breakdown is?
It's almost an even mix. It's almost an even mix.
A third,
Some
a
of our
third, and a third?
Yeah. Some of our smaller companies definitely don't have anything documented, and that's really where we do come into play. But even the ones that I work with, larger companies, some of the companies we work with in the top of qualified remodelers, top 500, are clients, and we go in and we still see opportunity where we can refine the process and sell more business.
Okay. So in a case like that, where you come in where they've got a system that's perhaps been cobbled, uh, and it's pretty good, but there's room for optimization, would your first thought be to say, here, we're going to bring our system in and use this one instead, or would it be to try to integrate what you do into what they do, or does that just further Frankenstein it?
Well, I think a lot of times we do have to etch a sketch what's there, even if there is some overlap. But I have a philosophy that if the individual on the team is getting the results they're looking for, and the leadership is getting the results they're looking for, we go into the office with an attitude of, we're not here to change you. We're here to give you some nuggets to help you get to one more sale. And when you do the math, for many people, one more sale a week, closing, not doing really anything any different than what you do on a daily basis, run the same number of leads, but if we can get you to close one more. But the bulk of the team, we work with folks that, shockingly have as low as 15, 12% close rates. And Rich, today, the average loaded lead cost today nationwide is north of $600. And when I work with a client that's less than 20% close rate, that I'm scratching my head sometimes, because I'm wondering how we're even staying open, because we're burning through these leads that are spending a lot of money on leads and then not converting them.
Okay, so that makes sense. When you say lead cost, loaded lead cost $600 plus, what do you consider a lead? Is this a raw inquiry that came in on a form or a phone call that's
Well,
needs
it's
what
it's
you want?
really, it's all of your marketing dollars, to start with. Everything you're paying for your call center, your advertising, your web page, and maybe your paid lead sources, basically divided by the total number of leads that you generate in a given period of time.
Yeah, right. So you define what loaded means. What do you mean by lead? Is that an inquiry? Is that a set appointment?
A set appointment.
Okay, set appointment. Okay,
Yes.
because that $600 number, I don't think anybody's going to argue that, wow, that seems way too high. It seemed a little bit high to me, but when it's a set appointment, that sounds right in range to me.
And for
Okay,
some
so
folks, that number is closer to 1,000.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Yeah, like I think most people would agree the two lowest setting raw leads are going to be aggregators and perhaps canvassing in some cases. So you might have to go through, three, four, five leads, raw leads to get that set. Okay, let's not focus on that. Let's jump into the step selling program. I think
excellent.
I think everybody on the podcast is familiar with the concept of step selling. We just identified that probably a third don't have it. A third maybe have some sort of cobbled. Another third do have this. Run me through from Dave Yoho Associates standpoint the steps. Help me understand what the steps are. How many steps are there first? I've heard the number 10 a lot. Is it 10 step?
Well, that's another great question. And for all the listeners today, it really doesn't matter how many steps you have. You can have 5 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps. We do promote a 7 step system.
Okay.
The key here, Rich, is are we following it? And we'll talk a little more about that as we go through the list here. But we do promote 7 steps, and we call them commitments. So we get a commitment from the homeowner. The sales process, it has to be centered around the homeowner, listening to their needs and desires and what they want to accomplish. The old adage is people buy from people they like and trust, and we have to establish that trust and like. So I can just have a system that I go through and really don't listen to you and not earn your business, where at the same time, if I slow down a little. So we do a series of commitments. And the first of those is getting a commitment to the agenda. Quite simply, do we have the right people in attendance that are supposed to be here? Are they going to be here for the right amount of time? I know many people are listening today have been on that appointment where halfway through the appointment, someone has to get up and leave. And
Yeah,
and
kids
we
are at soccer. I got to go.
That's exactly right. And we know that it's difficult. It's more difficult when two decision makers are initially present, and then you end up with one because you're going to get that very common objection is I need to talk to my partner or my spouse or my wife. Um, so we go through a series of commitments there and tying down that we take control of the timing and conditions of the visit. And really, while listening to the homeowner, we want to kind of steer the ship. If you think for just a minute, the average homeowner just wants a price, right? All I want is a quote. Just give me that price. But if we don't spend time with the homeowner, showing our product and why we're the best, that may be difficult, and we may get to the end to only hear, "Well, that's more than we thought." Um, the next thing that we promote and teach, Rich, is this a commitment to need. A commitment to need. It's too easy to get down to the end of the sales visit, and the two people sitting across from you, the husband, the wife, let's say in this example, they look at each other and say, "Do we really need this? Let's just put this on hold." And so many times we never really establish what that need looks like. And here's get it out of their mouth that we truly can't wait. We need to get this done sooner versus later. Uh, the,
So
the,
let's
yes,
let's pause there for just a minute. So we've got two commitments so far: the commitment to the agenda and the commitment to the need. Going back to the agenda, I'm going to assume that you uh, would promote some sort of pre-call confirmation to wrap that particular item up as much as possible, so that your salesperson's not walking into somebody who's like, "Well, I've only got 45 minutes."
that's right. And that starts when we work with the call centers or the folks doing the intakes and establishing. And we simply say, I see here the office is confirmed. The visit for 90 minutes. All we ask is that the two of you can be present for the entire time.
Yeah,
Is
and
that workable?
I'm gonna assume that in most normal situations, as long as the call center's done their job confirming that appointment, that as you go through these seven commitments, we've only gone through two so far, but as you go through two and then three, four, five, that most of the time, if the salesperson is skillful, they're gonna make the commitment in the affirmative. Here's my question: if they're not willing to make the commitment, is your advice then get up and leave? Obviously,
Well,
not abruptly and not rudely, but like, hey, if you've got to leave in 45 minets, then we need to reschedule this.
and that's spot on there, Rich, because if it's all about the homeowner, and this time isn't appropriate for both parties to be able to because something has come up or something's changed, I am a fan of being able to better accommodate them, and sometimes it means being able to come back. But we we share this message from the time the appointment is set. We share this message again at the confirmation process and then at the door. So 90% of the time, this isn't a surprise,
What about
to
the
the homeowners.
commitment to need? Role play that with me. I had you over to my house for new siding. This is something I'd like to have. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to die if I don't get it. So, I'm interested. Go ahead and role play that with me.
Well, Rich, I'm going to be very thorough with you and move around the house. I'm going to be looking at things like ROI. It's interesting with siding. It's almost in the cost versus value report, almost somewhere between in most markets between 80 and 100% return on your investment. But quite simply, you're changing the curb appeal to your house. So I'm looking deep. I'm looking deep at why did you call us out? What is it you want to do? I'm asking a series of questions and a needs assessment to try to better understand what was the purpose. And
Well,
then at,
I asked you here because my wife she doesn't like the way it looks. She thinks it's looking a little outdated. She'd like a different color, something that pops a little bit more. Right, dear? Yes, because she's here, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have proceeded. Yeah, okay, so that's it.
well, I'm going to share with you some things to have you fall in love. And really, we have two types of appointments. We have a need-driven appointment. That's the roof is leaking, my windows are leaking, or I'm having a broken piece of glass.
Yep.
And then we have the want items. But what we try to do is work with that homeowner to establish that sometimes, even with a want, it can be a need. Because when you take a look at outdated siding and we look for places that are brittle and we do a thorough inspection and we ask you a ton of questions along the way to really get you to say, I see why I'm here today. I see why you called us. So we try to work on getting that. We're trying to get that. What started is just, I want to get it done. And if we dig deep enough, we can find there's usually another problem that would surface during our time together.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to number three. What's the third commitment?
That's a commitment to trust. And a commitment to trust is sometimes people call it a company story. The commitment to trust we do a little bit different because instead of taking out our tablet or our flip book and show you this is us, this is my van, this is my people, we take the time to listen to the homeowner about what's important to them with the idea that choosing the right contractor or the right company might be the single most important decision they're going to make. You take windows, for example, you can find a quality window or roofing. You can even go to Lowe's and buy a national brand shingle, but it's about the application. And we think so many times, Rich, why doesn't someone buy from us at the end of the sales visit? What is it that causes them to say, I need to look around? Is it possibly they didn't find what they were looking for because I wasn't thorough enough to show you everything that you could possibly want? And is there this possibility that you just didn't trust me? You didn't know enough about my company. So we go ahead into what it is you're afraid of, how we can overcome it. And then we ask, if I can show you how I can meet or exceed these, have I earned the right to ask you for your order? And then we take you through this process of telling you how we as a company meet and exceed everything on your mind, and then ask you at the end, real simple, would you trust us to do this work for you?
And that's kind of the capper of this third commitment section is, do you trust us to do this? Make
Yes,
them confirm it.
correct. And if you do tell me out of your mouth that you trust us, that's such a big piece of the pie for us to be able to get to the end of this and it'll take that off the table. That you're not worrying about who we are as a company. That you do have that peace of mind knowing that we're going to do great work. We've got great reviews. We put in quality products, and then we stand behind it. And we're also insured.
Okay, good. So that's yes, I trust you. What's the fourth commitment?
This one seems obvious. When I say what it is, everybody would say, everybody listening to this say, would we do this? But as I travel from company to company, I find that as crazy as this sounds, we don't do it very well. And that's a commitment to a customized solution. It's your product demo. Do you know, Rich, I've been to offices, national brands, and observed people not showing their product in the home that you scratch your head and go, what are you even buying today? Our jobs are difficult as it is. We're selling somewhat of an invisible product in the home where they're talking to you about something you can't test drive this and we're going to put it in later. So I've got to get you to trust me and I also have to get you to fall in love with my product and why my product's better than everyone else's.
And does this become more like a features and benefits kind of a thing?
It does, but I take it a step further because I think it's sharing with what the competition offers as well. And when we can take out different products and say, out of these two, which would you want in your home? Which would you prefer? And they choose your product because it's leaps and bounds over the cheap product. I mean, really, who wants cheap? Is that what you want to put on your home? Something super cheap that you're going to end up having to do multiple times? But when you see the quality of the product, and then just making sure that the homeowner establishes that your product, it's clear that your product is the product that I would want in my home, and I really wouldn't want anything else, wouldn't need anything more.
Okay, so number four is the commitment to the customized solution. Could also phrase that as commitment to your products.
That's correct.
Okay, let's go to number five.
And right before we get to number five, we do use a pre-close question. And I think this piece, this element, is making sure that we remove all other objections off the table. That when I ask you, other than simple affordability, is there any other reason you wouldn't have us do this work for you? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the homeowner to say, I love you, I love your company, I trust you, and all these things are in play. That really we start isolating price and price alone. We have a saying that closing the sale is the natural conclusion to the satisfactory completion of each step of the selling process. That's one of our Yoho-isms. And this is just one more element of that. But getting you to say, once that price hits the table, we find that sometimes the homeowner will shut you down. They're already thinking this. We have to make sure that if there are any other questions that you have, that we've answered them. So we move on to a commitment to value. And the commitment to value is that you see why my product is worth every penny. That everything I'm talking to you about, you see why my product is priced at where it's at. And we are training people on how to handle, well, that's a little more than we thought. That's a little bit more than we thought. That's a common thing. Rich, we live in 2025 in this, what I call post-apocalyptic world, this post-COVID environment where everything's costing us more. Doesn't matter what we do. And so many times in the home, the homeowner is comparing us to a project they did 5 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, or maybe they just have this preconceived idea. And so many times I was working with a group just last week, and one of their senior sales reps had been around for 10 plus years with the company. And he said, when I get to this objection, I just hand him my card and say thank you. And after we were doing our training, he said, admittedly, and I appreciated his candidness, but this is what happens a lot of times because we start getting the homeowner saying it's way more, and I give up because I'm either calling my boss saying, hey, can you discount? Um, uh, or I give up and we end the appointment.
So, how do you attain the commitment to value?
Well, that's simply done by asking questions. Quite frankly, if I were to ask you, uh, Rich, was there a particular number you had in your head, or was there a place that you thought this was going to be? And you replied, and let's just role play and say that I tell you my product's 20, and you said you thought it was going to be 18. And even there, not stopping and say, that's a good number. Hey, I can appreciate that, but if you don't mind me asking, how did you come up with that? And a lot of times here, Rich, it's either I did get another quote and an opportunity for us to compare apples and oranges, because so many times today that if someone's thousands of dollars less, it's not a comparable product.
Right.
Somewhere the value's lost. Or if it was just that number you pulled out of your head, a chance for us to go back and rebuild value and discuss things like the impact of how pricing is higher today. And, like I said, maybe sometimes they are comparing it to a previous, but I've got to get that connection in your head that, really, good things are seldom cheap and cheap things are seldom good, right?
Is that a Yohoism?
I'm not sure where that one came from. I don't want to,
That's more, a little more like Zig Ziglar, maybe, but it's all good. Okay, so commitment to value. Moving right along, we're honing in on the close here.
well, and the value, commitment to value starts with the presenting your price. You know, Rich, if I said the top three reasons a sale is typically lost, the top three reasons in descending order. Number three, we never take control of the timing and conditions of the visit. And we never have in our agenda take control. We allow the homeowner to say, I just want a quote. I don't want to see your demo. I don't need to hear your pitch. I've heard others. That's number three. Number two, we never establish that need that we talked about. You don't have a need or a strong desire to improve a current situation. And the more you talk about your dissatisfaction with your current situation, the more likely you're going to want to be to fix it, to improve it. The number one reason a sale is lost is really in that presenting a price. You know, we have to make buying easy today. We have to make buying easy. If you love my company, love my product, and it is a little bit more, you know, a lot of our clients today, Rich, are financing 70 to 90% of their overall business. And we go, that's crazy. You know, I go into some offices that get 2%, 3%, 5%. And all I could see are dollar signs. Because if we're not making buying easy, and what I mean by that is giving you every option under the sun to get what you already want. And if I have these offerings, whether that's a low monthly payment option, a cash option with maybe a little cash discount, or a 0% finance offer, you know, I want to put every option in front of you and let you tell me which way you want to go with.
So, based on what you just said, I assume you're a big proponent of baking financing into the conversation as opposed to using it as what I call a last ditch deal saver.
Well, I'm 100% baking it in, as you said. But I do want to add to that. I'm also 100% engaged with what the homeowner wants to do. You know, me as the sales representative in the home, I'm listening to my homeowners, and you know, I want to be able to share every option because you know, if I don't share these options and I don't share the options of financing, and you just don't have the cash, and I saw an interesting statistic in 2023 Nerd Wallet, and it said this: if the average, almost 50% of Americans had $1,000 emergency, they would have to rely on a credit card today. And it's kind of scary, isn't it? That almost half of us that would have to rely on borrowing money if I had a small emergency. And these aren't my numbers, these are things that we've researched. But how do you feel when I come in your home and your roof is leaking and I share a number with you and you don't have but $300 in the bank? You know, you love everything I've got, but it's not going to work for you. Or
Mhm.
even if you had 10,000 in the bank, is, um, are you going to take everything you have today to buy your roof? Probably not, right? So we want to make sure that we're making this decision easy on you so that it becomes a simple choice. Which way would we want to go?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's go to the next commitment. What is it?
Commitment to action now. And really it's that urgency of why would I buy today? And I often call this step objection handling because there's so many times that the homeowner still has unanswered questions that we didn't handle. But, you know, 80%, a study shows that 80% of people, homeowners will say no 4 times before they say yes. I mean, think about that. 80% of homeowners will say no 4 times before they say yes. But get this, Rich, the subsequent statistic here is that 92% of sales reps give up the first couple times they hear no. You know, it's discouraging. You're a young salesperson. You're trying to do all the right things. You get to the home, and the person answers the door and says, "Look, I'm going to tell you right now, we're not buying today." So we promote the idea that that should go in this ear and out this ear, because you know what happens when I'm your salesperson and I let that get in my head that you're not buying. And guess what? Today is Friday. Today is Saturday. I'm in the home. I've got somewhere else I'd rather be. Guess what I start doing? I start shortchanging this process and not giving you everything. And then when I don't show you my product, or I don't get you to trust my company, or I don't follow the steps, or we don't do a thorough needs assessment, it's no wonder you're not buying.
Yeah. Yep. Action now. So what are some tips for getting action now? Or how do you set the stage for getting that commitment?
Well, and there's multiple ways there. One of my favorites is asking the question of what would have needed to exist to have earned your business. What would have needed to exist today to have earned your business? Another strategy that we use is what we call a 1 to 10 close. And quite simply, if I just said, Rich, on a scale of 1 to 10, one being you're never going to buy from XYZ construction, and 10, you're ready to get on the schedule today, what kind of score would you give me? And typically, Rich, you're going to get that 6, 7. Compliment the answer. You give me a 7, and I say that's a pretty good score. But I got to ask you, Rich, what's it going to take to get that 7 to a 10? And and so many times, people's minds that maybe may have just be sitting here listening today to our podcast say that I'm promoting that we need to go drop the price. There's so many times today that sometimes it's restructuring the product, the project, restructuring. We see this with a lot of the window companies. Uh, Maybe for whatever reason you're not interested in doing some simple interest financing or a low monthly payment, because maybe you just went through a bad situation at home and you don't have that credit available, but you also don't have the money in the bank. And I'm talking to you about 25, 30 windows, but really the biggest problem was on the front of the house where you had 10. Sometimes it's restructuring and saying, would you like to see how this will look? Because once I establish that trust with you, you want to buy from me. My job is just working it out so I can help you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So I'm committed to action now. And what next? Commitment to giving me money right now?
No, that's funny. But the commitment to follow up. And Rich, if you ask me, one of the most difficult things to get sales teams to do is understand the importance and the value of what visiting an installation. I'll use that first. Visiting an installation. If I go into an office and I start talking to the installation teams and I say, how many times do you have someone stop and ask you when they see your truck in the driveway about, do you guys do this? Almost always, Rich, they say on a regular basis. But yet we can't get our salespeople back to the installation. We know there's an opportunity. It's almost a dirty word today. We've become, in many offices, very complacent. The idea of talking to the next door neighbor, you mentioned the word canvassing. It's almost unheard of today. One of the things that I love doing is you have this opportunity to build a relationship with the homeowner. They like you and trust you. They've just spent a lot of money on your products and services, but we don't get any referrals from you. So we introduced the customer appreciation program and multiple times throughout the process. And when you look at that, you go, I'll ask teams on a regular basis, why do you think we don't get more referrals? And eventually somebody will be honest. And what do you think?
We never asked for them.
That's it. That's 100% it. They don't ask. So we want to talk about those things. And then how many times do people go back? I worked many, many years ago when I first got into in-home sales, 25 some odd years ago. And when I first got started, I heard a story of some guys and girls that didn't accept company leads. And I got really good at what I was doing, but I kind of call it a lead junkie. You give me a lead, and I got really good at closing it. But this idea of prospecting, and it wasn't until later in my career with this company that I continued to advance into multiple roles at regional, and then I took a position as a project type position as a national trainer, and I got a chance to work with some of the individuals that said that I remember hearing about from day one that never took a company lead. And there was a common denominator in what they were telling me. The common denominator was this. They looked at me and maybe worded it different ways, but John, we do what nobody else wants to do. And I said, tell me more. They go back to the home after the installation and perform another inspection. So how many times does this homeowner who loves your product, we're doing things like with some groups bringing donut and coffees and having the neighbors over with some of my clients that we're actually making this fun, but very difficult to believe in windows and roofing and siding that I'm selling a house that's in this condition. Well, guess what? A 3 mile radius, all the homes were built in the same time.
Yeah, all need it.
Yes, they all need it and they all want it. How do we get to those folks and maybe have that opportunity? There's another interesting statistic. Referrals close about 80% of the time. And you may go, well, okay, why is that? Why do you think that is, John?
Well, the commitment to
Well,
trust, it's already done.
right. And if I'm your next door neighbor, Rich, and I come over and said, who did your deck? Who did your windows? And you brag because we executed at 100% when we came out. We did everything I told you we were going to do. The price was fair. You might even you see my products, you love it, but this idea that you told me, and people feel comfortable doing what others do. And the fact that you said, I trusted this company, it makes that referral opportunity much easier when I get there. And you know what? I might have even asked you, if you don't mind me asking, Rich, how much? What did
Yeah.
you
Well,
pay? What?
it's not just that they recommended this company, is that they've already gone through the process. They've paid the money. They've had the thing installed and everything went great.
That's
That's
right.
not nothing. Like
That's right.
that. Let's go read online reviews. I mean, the online reviews are awesome for the same reason, but I don't know these people. So I put a lot of value in the review, but I don't know them. So if it's my next door neighbor or guy from church or whatever, and they're telling me it and they've had the personal experience. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on board with the getting more referrals. So how do you get the more referrals? Ask was the main thing you said. Any tidbits on that? Do you use
Well,
programs like Get the Referral?
we start with most groups that don't have anything, and there's a lot of great companies that are strategic partners of ours that do some things to help out with generating. But we start organically because if we're not talking about it, is number one, we want to create a tangible offer. A tangible. What are we paying? We said earlier on the podcast today that
600.
yeah, we're paying $600, but then when you get into an office and you say, "What do you guys offer to somebody that refers?" and they're like $50 or $20 or something, but we're paying 600 for a lead. So we want to create a tangible referral offer, and maybe that's a nice dinner out for you and your significant other to go to a Ruth's Chris tonight, that you can go out to eat on us. Um, we also want to create, and I'm sure you're familiar with an elevator pitch,
Yep.
but an elevator pitch, if I met you on the third floor and you said, what do you do, John? And I've got just a few seconds for me to be able to tell you. But we create an elevator pitch so that when I say, do you remember if I talked to you about the customer appreciation program? I know it like this. And then we implement things like neighborhood Facebook pages, scripting on how we're going to canvas and talk to the neighbors, just a multitude of things to get us to that end result. And then being able to, something as simple as this. How many salespeople listening today don't even get the homeowner's number in their phone? So we're training a lot of fundamental practices to say, that average sales rep that says, "Hey, I don't want a homeowner calling me after this sale. I don't ever want to have anything to do with them again. I'm afraid you're going to have a problem." We try to take an opposite approach and say, I want to be that point of contact for you. And when you do have a referral, you know who to contact.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a reason that Dave Yoho Associates is, well, they're the oldest, I think, probably, been around the longest, but the most well known. I know. Here's what I want you to tell my audience. What kinds of things are available from Dave Yoho? And before you answer, I'm just going to preemptively answer for you. There's a lot of companies that do events, in live trainings and things like that, and the Dave Yoho Associates ones, from what I've heard, are phenomenal. People rave about them. They keep coming back. Like it, it's like it's top shelf, perfect 10 kind of stuff. So what is it you have? So you got some training, some live events you do. Tell me about those, and then tell me what else you guys have, quote unquote, for sale.
And a great question, Rich. Twice a year we get together and we have a profit summit. We mix these up, and it's not just people like me standing on stage talking. It's other successful business owners and successful people, whether they're from a marketing background, and they have an opportunity. I definitely would encourage each listener to take a look at daveyoho.com at the next upcoming event. And I think I've heard rumors that that's going to be in St. Louis. So we try to do those all over the United States so that it's conducive to everyone. But we do a couple of those a year. My boss also puts out white papers. He writes a tremendous amount, a wealth of knowledge, and writes on a free resource side these opportunities. And then I like to say when we come into an office or we start working with a relationship is we have a little bit of something for everyone. And sometimes that can be some, from a more simple side, just some recordings for you to listen to and some digital material. We do virtual stuff, Rich. I just finished this week with a group in Spokane, Washington, where we handled everything virtually, training the teams. But really, the biggest successes when I look at the success I have over the last 3 years with working with companies is really when we get out in the field, we get into your office and start digging into what really goes on. So we even offer ongoing consulting. I have a client right now that's in their third year of working with us that had me back year after year because of the tremendous results that they continue to see. But one of the things I think for the listeners today that I would like to offer is a 30-minute free consultation, a chance one-on-one at no cost to you to be able to talk about what your challenges are. And I did create a special dedicated email address for this so that I can track these separately. But if it's okay, I'll just share that.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes for
Oh,
anybody that
no.
wants to see it there, but tell me, let's hear it also.
Yoho free 30 at gmail.com. That's YOHOFREE and the number 30 at gmail.com. And Rich, I'd like to also throw out my personal email address because there are going to be some listeners that said, hey, I've got another question about what's going on and you want to reach me a different way. But I'm J Hicks, Hicks, at daveyoho.com.
Okay. Now, if somebody sends an email to you at yohofree30 at gmail.com, what is it they're going to get specifically?
I'm going to schedule a time that's convenient for them to do a 30-minute consultation where
Okay.
we get on the phone together and or a Zoom call and just really talk about ways and some of the frustrations that are going on in their business and how we can possibly help. And sometimes that's free advice, other times that's taking it to another level.
And will they be dealing directly with you or somebody else in the company, you think?
They're going to work directly with me.
Okay.
And I do have several colleagues, but I like to personally have a personal touch so that I just like being involved with everyone because if I said something today, maybe someone else might have said it differently.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Well, John, thanks so much for being here today. I think you guys will be participating in a webinar that we do coming up. So I've enjoyed the relationship. Man, my podcast that I did with Dave, the OG Dave, that was that's like talking to Yoda, man. Like that guy just knows everything.
And highest level respect. And you said it might have been pre-COVID. Since then, and you know, Dave's a World War II vet,
Yeah.
uh, and he received the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor, which I get goosebumps every time I think about this. Probably one of the most interesting men I've personally ever met. He also spoke on the beaches of Normandy just recently for D-Day. He was the Grand Marshal in the Veterans Parade, Memorial Day Parade, but just always doing just giving, giving, giving. Super great guy. So if you ever, I challenge each and every one of you, if you have a chance to hear him speak or to see him in person, you won't regret it.
Yeah, great. Well, fantastic. Also, my previous conversation, which I'll find and put in the show notes, with Brad. Brad's his son, I assume, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Also, great guy. Very knowledgeable. You know, he took the baton, so to speak, from his dad and has run very admirably with it.
And Brad's a super guy too. I mean, people ask me all the time, what do you like best about Dave Yoho Associates and why do you do what you do? Well, part of that is being able to help others fulfill their goals. I'm passionate, but another part of why you work for people is when you work for great people like Brad and Dave, um, they they're there for you when everything isn't great, and they're just great people to work for and understanding. So, Rich, I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'll put these email addresses in the show notes, also some of these other episodes I've mentioned. And hey, everybody, reach out to John, drop him in line, and I'll talk to you guys. I'll have you or somebody else from the company on in the future. I have no doubt about it. Thank you.
Thank you.